of cash over time here? I mean, I think that's sort of an interesting secondary question here as you guys think about your own corporate health, if you want to talk about that for a moment here.
Sure, it's a good question. I mean, what's interesting about this business, and I mentioned before that our platform fees are made in cash up front. We're a cash business. I mean, we're not a dry cleaner, but we're a cash business. And that just means that free cash flow is a big part of our business. And we get the question a lot from investors and analysts of what are you going to do with all that money? And it's a great question. And it's a great issue to have. We'll work with our board once we're public and figure out what our policy around that will be. But certainly any combination of dividends or buybacks, or we could put loans on our balance sheet and use our capital towards that. That's not in the immediate plan, but it's certainly something that we're set up to do if we wanted to, is use capital for investment purposes as well. So, from a balance sheet standpoint, we are in a very solid position. When we close our SPAC merger, we will be putting another $50 million of cash on our balance sheet. As I said, we're a cash generator, not a cash user, so that's much more of a liquidity buffer than anything else. But we'll have a nice, solid balance sheet, which, look, we'll figure out what to do with the cash. But as in the CFO seat, love to have as strong a balance sheet as I can because it makes us a real counterparty for lots of different types of partners. So for capital partners, for contractors, for others in the market, it helps to have scale and balance sheet, no question about it.
That's a very, very relevant point you bring up. I mean, how do you think about this? I mean, owning those assets on your balance sheet strategically, right? Because, as you say, like that's a very relevant and eligible investment sort of asset class to put your money back into, right? Put your money where your mouth is, maybe said differently. That being said, it's a different, maybe it's a different risk profile than, owning a credit book or what have you. I mean, how do you think about that versus other, more growth-oriented investments might be the best catch-all that I could come up with? Even if you haven't necessarily made these decisions yet, you bring it up, and it's a very important one that's obvious, but curious on thoughts.
Yeah, I'll start and then Matt can go as well. I mean, I want to be clear, we have no plans to put loans on our balance sheet. That is not in our plan. It's just an option that we could execute down the road. When I put that next to growth-oriented investments, would I prefer to use $50 million to put loans on my balance sheet or $50 million to make an acquisition that helps us create stickiness with our contractor network? Much rather the latter. So if we're going to engage in using our capital, I think making our existing channels as solid and as sticky as possible and improving our product and increasing our revenue, that would be my take on it, for sure. Obviously, we make decisions as a group and as a team and with the board, but that would be my inclination.
And just to elaborate even on that, right? Again, because I get that you want to bring scale with any use of cash flow, and you want to, and the idea of securing your contractor network, if you will. I think that's kind of the way you just described it. I mean, what are the options to do that, right? I mean, one can think about improved terms or what have you for them, and that's not always necessarily the best from your perspective. But how does one create that stickiness with an acquisition?
Sure. Well, we offer our contractors today a number of tools to help them sell more, from our pre-qualification tools to our rewards platform. And we can continue to invest in tools like that to help them sell more is one example. Another example is if you think about these three pillars that I described: distribution, risk management, and access to capital. It works very well in home improvement, and we could look at other point-of-sale finance opportunities and use some of that capital to invest in the distribution. Management, and we could use the risk management and the access to capital in an adjacent market or in another vertical, and continue to accelerate our growth and make the investment in distribution either by buying or by building. We don't have any near-term plans to enter another vertical, but when I think about long-term strategic use of capital, that's certainly some optionality for us as well.
Yeah, that makes a good amount of sense here, frankly.